Hey there, guys. Just working on the Pinto again. Yeah, it's been a minute. Kind of forgot how to use these things. I'm sure we'll figure it out. Let's get started. Alright, so, all jokes aside, a lot has changed since the last time I made a video with this thing. We've moved towns, we bought a new house, into a new garage, and so we're very thankful for that, but the situation is a little bit different. As you can tell, this garage isn't quite as nice as the last place, but that's fine. We're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. In the meantime, I had this car, had the Pinto stored out of my parents' house. Got stored outside for free, so thank you very much to my parents. But because of that, we've got some more of my stuff to address. The car, when we moved, I just threw a whole bunch of crap into the car. I've already pulled some of it out, but we're going to need to pull some more of it out and then get the interior cleaned up again. And then, next thing on the list to do, we're going to look at the wiring for the whole chassis. I'm going to try to reuse the factory harness that was with this car that I pulled apart and find some damaged parts of it, replace all that, what I need to. I know there was some damage from mice and patch jobs and just whatever else. So we're going to try to fix some of that and make it usable. Instead of buying a full harness, that may be in the future, but for now we're going to try to use what we've got in the spirit of being budget. And then the next thing that we'll need to do to get this thing to really be driven is brakes. And so I'm going to have to order a bunch of stuff for that. Shouldn't be anything too crazy, but I do kind of want to go through pretty much the whole brake system, make sure everything's good, make sure the calipers all work, make sure lines aren't busted with holes in them and that kinds of thing. So right off the bat, I know that we need a new master cylinder. That one doesn't do a single thing. Just leaks all the fluid out of it. That's the only thing it does. And so we'll have to do that. Gonna seal up the calipers and check over all that. I know we got some ball joints to adjust, so we'll have to go through all that and make that work. But in this video, what we're gonna work on is getting the interior cleaned back up, and then we're gonna try to dive into some of the actual wiring, laying it all out, trying to see if we can identify what is what we want to keep. There may be some stuff we want to get rid of, some of the factory AC control stuff, I don't know. We're going to look into that and try to see what all we can remove, if any, try to clean up the harness a little bit, and then see if we can put it back in the car. The battery's now in the back, so we'll have to do some changes for that, I'm sure, and maybe some other things to do what we want to do now. So, yeah, let's go ahead and jump into that, and we'll pull some of the stuff out of the interior and get it cleaned up. So let's go. Alright, so as you can see here, this is a bunch of stuff. Some of this is Miata stuff, but some of this is Pinto stuff. Actually, most of this I think is Pinto stuff. The factory, all of the factory wiring. Some of it's engine related, and if you've seen the videos before, basically we adapted the Ranger front harness there and made that a standalone engine harness. So my plan is to take all of the engine stuff that was in the Pinto's harness and make that basically a standalone chassis harness. So that's the goal. We'll dive into that, see what we can get to. You can see that there's been some more mouse strappings through here. There was a bunch of extra leaves and sticks and dirt and whatever else. I think there's probably some more under all that. But yeah, I basically just kind of threw all the stuff in here. There's some raw materials. There's some stuff that we cut out of the rear floor pan to fit the fuel cell. Some boxes of random crap and more Miata stuff. And so I'm going to set the camera up for a time lapse and we'll start pulling some of this out. Alright, I may have lied a little bit to you. I also went ahead and got a new master cylinder, so we're going to try to throw this in there and see what kind of brakes we've got. I don't think it'll be the total solution. I think I'm going to probably have to go through and replace pretty much everything in the brake system. I probably should replace like the rubber lines and things like that. But I've got a remanufactured, actually, because it was way cheaper that way, brake master cylinder. And so we're going to try to replace this old crusty one right here. We're going to take this off and we're going to put that one on. So let's see what that does. Okay, I got the pedal rod disconnected from the pedal. That is a huge pain. I don't know if you can see it there or not. You can kind of see where it comes in there. There's a little cotter pin on the end of the pin, and then the brake switch is like kind of sandwiched over the pin as well. And then like a little washer. So we got that disconnected under here now. Now we should be able to unbolt it from the firewall, undo the lines, and then be able to replace it. So let's do that next. Alright, so I got the master cylinder out, and as you can see, this is like super disgusting in here, so we're going to try to clean that up a little bit. This bolt over here was insanely hard to get, but I did get it off. So here is the old one, and obviously the new one. And this one was pretty crusty. The seal on the back of this was like super blown out, and obviously the seal inside there is blown out too because there was fluid all over. As you can see, it's already dripping from there. And this did absolutely nothing when I pressed the pedal, so hopefully this one should be a lot better. So let's see if we can get this one installed now. Should be easier than getting this old one out, but I probably shouldn't say that because I'd probably jinx myself. Okay, so I got the new one assembled here. If you're following along at home, make sure you put the seal on before you put the rod in. Otherwise you have a really hard time trying to get the seal over the end of the rod. Ask me how I know. I didn't put any fluid in this thing or anything yet. My plan is that I'm going to bolt it onto the car and then use the pedal to help bleed it out first before I hook up to the lines basically, and then it should be good to go. I came over here, cleaned this up as best I could with some brake clean, and then came back in with some, some orange restoration in a can, and it's better. It's not rust, I guess. I don't know. Sure. So let's try to put that in there. All right. So that's all bolted in. I got the rod connected to the brake pedal. So, now I'm going to put some fluid in it, and we're going to try to see if we can get some fluid coming out of it through the ports, and then we'll hook it up to the lines and maybe try to bleed some of the brakes. So, just give it a shot. Alright, so I pulled the wheels off, and then I PB blastered the, what do you call it, the bleeder screw. Yeah, made sure that those were not going to break off. And they didn't, luckily, both of the front ones at least. I opened them up, let some of the fluid just kind of run out, and then tightened it back down. That's really all I did for bleeding, at least so far. This one kind of had fluid coming out right away, but like I said, both bleeders were not rusted shut. I was able to loosen them without breaking them off, which is super awesome. So, I think while I have the wheels off, I may try to bleed it a little bit more, or I might just leave it for now, because the brake pedal actually does feel pretty solid. I could tell that there was some air before, so I cracked the bleeders out and let some of that air escape, let some of the fluid just come through to the calipers there, and I'm not seeing any signs of the fluid leaking past the calipers, and it feels like a pretty solid pedal. So, I'm going to say that that's pretty good, and we could definitely try to test drive it like that with the brakes like that. So the master cylinder is all installed. We got fluid in there. Everything seems to be all good. I think I had one of the lines, this front line here, I didn't quite have it tight enough all the way, so tighten that down all the way, and I don't think I'm leaking there anymore. And yeah, so overall wasn't too bad, but I'm going to take that little hunk of rusty metal back to O'Reilly and get my $5 back for the core. So like I did say in this episode, we were going to do more of some of the wiring stuff, so that's going to be what we work on next. Alright, settle down, please, settle down, please. Alright, so today in class what we're going to talk about is wiring. We're going to go through this old piece of crap harness and clean it up, take all the stuff we don't need, and keep only the stuff that we do need. So, with that being said, who can tell me what the very first thing that we need to do with this wiring harness is? We've already got it pulled from the car, and obviously it's up here on the bench so we can all address it. But what is the first thing that we need to do? Yep, you, go ahead.
Throw it away and start over.
Nope, not that. Anybody else?
Inspect.
Yep, go ahead. What do you say?
Inspect the harness.
Yep, that is correct. So what we need to do first, like you said, is to pull all the loom off, get it all kind of cleaned up, and find any other broken spots or cut or any issues with the wiring harness itself. Try to get as much of the tape and stuff off as we can, and just try to get to all of the wiring and see all that. So, yep, good job. Okay, so after we get through that, the next thing that we're going to do, can anybody tell me what that's going to be? Yep.
Yeah, check for leaks.
I'm sorry, what?
Check for leaks.
No, that doesn't really apply to this.
Oh.
What?
Identify the circuits!
Yep, that is correct. We gotta go through and label everything. So I've got some masking tape and a Sharpie, and some of it's gonna be pretty self-explanatory. You can probably figure out what some of this is. I know what some of it is just off the top of my head. Other things are gonna be less self-explanatory, and we're gonna probably need to use some wiring diagrams. So I've got those printed out here, and I've also got them pulled up on my computer if I can't read this because it's nice and old. So we're going to go through and label everything that we can see. Even if it's something that we don't want, we're going to go ahead and put a label on it. That way we know that we don't need it and that we can take it out. So that's the second step. After that, what's next? Anybody tell me what's next? Yes.
You gotta remove what you don't want.
Yep, exactly. We're going to go through all the stuff that we labeled that we don't want. We're going to take that out and then keep all the stuff that we do want, and we know what will be what because of the labels. And so then once we've got all the way through that, then what's the next step? Anybody tell me? Yeah.
You gotta put it all back together.
Exactly. We're going to go and bundle all the wires up, throw some Tessa tape on it, maybe reuse some of the loom where we need to. And
you gotta fix all the bad spots, though.
Make sure we fix all the spots. Yep, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then kind of clean it all back up and put it all back together. And then once we got all that, we can throw it in the car and make sure it works. So, let's get on to that. Okay, so I got this giant bundle of stuff pulled off, including like the starter relay and the majority of the loom at least. And now what I'm doing is I've got my power supply and my voltmeter and some jump leads and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of going through trying to see if I can figure out what system is what and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty tedious and kind of boring to watch. So I'm just going to kind of go through all this, and then I will come back when I'm done. Alright, so I think I'm kind of done with the harness for now. There are a few more things I could probably take out of the interior harness, but I'm going to go ahead and leave them in there for now. There's not a huge reason to remove it all, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave some of that stuff in there. There will be some things that don't get plugged in, but that's fine. A few extra wires and a few extra connectors here and there will not kill me. So I've gone through all this, and I think I've kind of gotten everything that's I don't think there's really anything that's going to be an issue. Get back to this when there's an issue. And so anyway, here's what we got. This over here, all this stuff is basically from the firewall forward. This grommet right here is going to go through the firewall, and then all these wires will be inside, and then the rest of this will be in the engine bay. And pretty much all this is over here is the headlights, the front turn signals, the front marker lights on either fender, and then the horn. So that's all that it is over here. I got rid of everything else that had to deal with the engine. And then this is kind of going to be where the main power comes in. This would have gone pretty much to the battery terminal. Since my battery is going to be in the back, I'll probably connect this either down to the starter or something along those lines where the main battery cable comes in. And then that'll come in, and these two plugs right here connect to these two plugs, and then that powers the rest of the harness. The ignition switch will then send the power through the rest to the other things, as well as like the light switch. I was playing with this here. I set up my power supply thingy and pulled the light switch out of the car, and then hooked up my grounds and my main powers and things like that, and I was able to get the lights to turn on and off with the switch there, so that's really good. I did have to do some finagling with the this is the high beam selector, which is down on a foot pedal. So I did have to do some finagling with that. Basically, if there's nothing connected, none of the lights will turn on, and so you have to tell it the low beams and then tell it the high beams, and I was able to get both situations to work at the actual plugs. And then I've got these plugs here go back to the taillights, and so then that wiring is actually still in the car. And I tested that; it seems to work, I think. It's a little bit weird because some of it didn't have all the grounds it needed, but I'm pretty confident that it's all there and all going to work. I do have some bad fuses that I'll have to switch out, and but that's not anything too crazy. And so yeah, I think we're pretty much ready to. I don't think I'm really going to do any more cleanup on this. I may try to get some more loom to put in this. I had a little bit, so I put some of it on, but it may be fine as it is, and then put some on later. I think most of this should be accessible. Most of this will be behind the dash, so I don't think it's really necessary. But I think we're pretty much ready to go ahead and put this back in the car, and then we will have lights and everything, and have a whole chassis harness. So that's really exciting, and yeah. It's out of gas. So, I'm gonna go get some gas. Okay. Got gas now. Let's try this again. Alright, I got the front half of the engine harness out here now with the car, and so you can see here, over here by the brake booster, it's really hard to see, right here, this hole is where this grommet is going to go. So now what I'm left with is I had this section of wiring, which is for like the ignition system on the Ranger engine. I had that running through that hole right there, and So now I'm trying to decide if I want to like de-pin this connector and run all the wires through the grommet, and then I have it nice and clean, or I just want to cut the grommet. The funny thing is, this grommet's like really nice, surprisingly, out of everything that was on this car. And I took out a whole bunch of wires from it, so I've got plenty of room to go in there. So I may end up just doing that and running the wires through it. So I kind of got it laid out where I think it goes. I'm pretty sure the horn was on that side, so that's why I put that side over there. I was looking at the turn signal wires here, and my wiring diagrams tell me that this green and, what is it, I think it's green and white, yeah. This green and white wire is the turn signal. However, it doesn't really tell me what side. So I think I'm going to kind of guess here, and since I'm pretty sure the horn was over there, I'm going to keep it that way and run it that way, and hopefully my turn signals work the correct direction. Yeah, so we'll see. Worst case scenario, I'll have to take the whole harness and flip it around, but it's not that big of a deal. So I'm going to work on de-pinning this and running it through the grommet there, and then we'll figure out what's next.
Yeah, so I've dealt with a lot of these Ford connectors by this point, and they're all really pretty easy. You can just pull out this little red plate, and then all of the connectors are really easy to pull out. And so that's why it's not too big of a deal to pull all the wires out and run it through the grommet here.
And just like that, the connector is now off of the giant bundles of wires. So, now to run this through the grommet.
This part was slightly more challenging, but still wasn't really too bad. So overall, I'm really happy that I de-pinned the connector and was able to run all the wires through the grommet here. It just makes it a lot cleaner than having to drill a separate hole or cut the grommet or anything. So
Now we got our bundle of wires through, and now we can put the connector back on and shove everything through the hole, put the grommet in place. So, another important thing to note here is that I did take a picture of how the wires were in the connector before I took them all out. So, if you're doing this at home, make sure you either take a picture of it or write it down. Usually it's easier to just take a picture of it because you have your phone right there with you. So, this one actually wasn't in the connector, but the rest of these here were in the connector. I could probably guess and get pretty close, but I took some reference pictures, so I'm going to use those to refer to and put the connector back together. I got the passenger side wiring, light wiring ran. I ran across the back underside there. I'll probably put like a P-clamp or something under there to kind of hold it tucked up under there, and then you can't really see the wire once it's there. Went into the fender well right there, came through the fender well, and then out to headlights. I actually didn't even have to take the headlight or the turn signal out. I was able to just run the wiring down in there. So, it was super easy. I have the fender liner taken out of this side, so I'll have to do the same on the other side, but no big deal. And then run the wiring through there, and then we will have headlights. So that's super cool. So we can do that, put the harness on inside, and then make sure we get power and grounds hooked up and stuff. Oh, I still got to hook up the ground on this side as well, to something over there. And then we can run it to the taillights, and we should have lights for everything, which is super awesome. So let's do this side now. Okay, so we got both headlight wiring all set up, and I had to pull the fender well out for this one. Got the wiring ran, got grounds put down for both corners, and we're ready to move on to the inside. So I pulled the dash out. Now we can bring in the rest of the chassis harness, plug what's left back in, and then figure out. So what we did here is I rigged the engine harness to be able to run off of the ignition switch there. And so basically what I'm going to need to do is pull that stuff back out and connect it into the chassis harness somehow, and then we should be able to do both. So that's what we're gonna do next. Alright, so I have pulled the wiring out of the starter switch there, the ignition switch, and then I labeled them. So I need the, I have one that has constant 12 volt power, that's why the end is taped up. This one would be to start. This is the starter signal. And then I've got one for the ignition. The ignition needs a constant 12 volt while cranking and when on. And then there's another wire right there, this green one, for the charging. So it needs 12 volts powered to be able to charge with the alternator. So now that plug is empty, I'm going to go ahead and grab the rest of the inside harness, start kind of figuring out which way it goes and kind of where it needs to be, and then place it in there, plug everything in. I did disconnect the battery just because I don't really want anything to accidentally short. So just probably better safe than sorry. So let's go. Okay, I got updates. So I have the harness in there, and I ran through, and I've got lights everywhere. I've got turn signals, I've got brake lights, I've got headlights, high and low beams, I've got running lights. That's super awesome, super awesome, and it all works with the key switched on. I got power when I need to be where I need to with the key switched on and stuff. My one problem that I'm working on right now is I can't figure out where the wire comes from to send the starter signal. It looks like I may have accidentally taken it out of the harness because it was kind of part of the engine side of things.
Get back to this when there's an issue.
And so I can't find the wire that actually actuates it. But that's not that big of a deal. If I need to, I can just put a button in there to start, make it a push button start. And but I've got it set up so that when I turn the key on, my ECU and ignition and all that stuff is powered just like it was before. And but now it's integrated through the harness, through the switch and everything. So yeah, basically what next thing that I need to do is figure out something to do for the starter, and then we'll have all of our lights and everything, which is super awesome. So but that's gonna pretty much be it for today. So I'm gonna put this aside, and I may kind of come back up with that and finish that up later. But I wanted to show you guys something else. I may have picked up another project, and it may or may not involve these. So here is my 1985 RX-7, which is a GSL SC, which means it came with a 13B. It has gray and black interior, which is super awesome. It's got a glass sunroof. Obviously there's no engine in it. I've got a bunch of pieces for an engine, but basically we're going to get to this later. I just wanted to kind of show you guys real quick, but that's going to be the next project. So once we get this thing rocking and rolling, we will move on to the FB. Alright. Okay, so I think that's actually going to be it for this episode. I know it probably was kind of all over the place and probably kind of a mess, but I'll see when I go to edit it. Hopefully it's somewhat cohesive. But we did make some really good progress on the Pinto. We've got all of the chassis harness pretty much sorted. We've got a few little things to button up. I'm probably just going to end up getting a switch panel and putting the starter on a button and the fuel pump and things like that. So we can work on that later. We do have some brakes, which is also what we did in this episode. So that's super awesome. And yeah, so we're pretty close to driving this thing for real and legitimately. So I'm gonna have to do some paperwork and get a plate on this thing, which I think you guys might like. I have a cool idea for that. And then we do some other little things. I gotta fix a ball joint and maybe go through the rest of the brakes a little bit better, and then we can actually drive this thing. And yeah, so all right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I'll come out with another video soon and not have to make you guys wait another 6 months or whatever it's been. So thank you guys so much for your support, and catch you next time. Peace out.